verwirklichen, wird sie eine ewige und unverschämte
You're looking for trouble? You came to the right place. You're looking for trouble? Just look right in my face. I was born standing up and talking back. My daddy was a green-eyed mountain cat because I'm evil. My middle name is Misery. Well, I'm evil, so don't you mess around with me.
Who was the most evil man of the 20th century? Well, we're going to look at this thing from a King James Bible-believing perspective. Okay, we're not going to look at it from a worldly perspective because, according to the world, there would be really no competition here. But as a Bible-believing Christian, we have to look at all the facets of what makes somebody evil or wicked. We have to look at that. And I just want to say that we're going to make some comparisons today. We're going to look at some scripture. But I'm going to show you some things that are very, very shocking. Things that I did not know. All right. So let's begin here. Adolf Hitler. The two men that are going to be talked about in this study. Adolf Hitler was born on April 20th, 1889, and he died April 30th, 1945 at 56 years old. Elvis Presley was born January 8th of 1935, and August 16th of 1977 is when he died. He was 42 years old. So it's interesting because, you know, if you want to look at which man lived longer, Hitler actually lived longer than Elvis Presley. Hitler was a lot more careful with his health than Elvis Presley was. Okay? But, you know, let me ask the question. What is the Bible standard for somebody being wicked? Okay? Is it how many people they kill or how many people that they damn to hell? See, being a murderer is a bad thing, certainly. Was Adolf Hitler a murderer? Yeah, he was. But I believe that there were probably saved people that Adolf Hitler killed. And they went to heaven when they died. Did Adolf Hitler go to heaven? No. I don't think so. You know, he was a... Well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. But the fact of the matter is, when you look at the evil of these men and their lasting effect that it had on the world, my contention is that Elvis Presley was a whole lot worse than Adolf Hitler. And I know there's going to be people, oh, you're nuts, you're crazy, you're nuts, and everything else. Yeah, answer the matter before you hear it. And when you do, it's folly and shame to you. All right? Watch the whole video. Consider what's being said here. Consider it from a Bible-believing standpoint. All right? I'm going to show you that Elvis Presley, excuse me, he made some things happen that have had a real lasting effect on our culture, not just in America, but across the world. Whereas Adolf Hitler, he did some evil things, but they really didn't have much of a lasting effect. So let's compare the two here. Number one, Elvis professed to be a Christian. Assemblies of God, you know, he would come out with a gospel album occasionally and sing the old hymns, of course, to a worldly beat. Hitler also professed to be a Christian. And interestingly, you know, he, in his book Mein Kampf, actually talked about being led by divine providence and the will of God and all these other things. So both men were professing Christians. Now, were they Christians? No. Neither one of them was saved. I guarantee you neither one of them was saved. But let's look here at Titus chapter 1, verse 16. If you're familiar with this ministry, you probably know where I'm going with this. But if you're new, well, then you've probably not heard these verses before. And if you're not saved, then I'm sure you've never heard these verses before. It says here, Titus chapter 1, verse 16 says, they profess that they know God, but in works they deny him, being abominable and disobedient, and unto every good work reprobate. You see, a lot of people out there have this funny notion that anybody says that they're a Christian, automatically they're a Christian just simply because they say that they're a Christian. And that's why a lot of atheists get turned off, because they see some hypocrite that professes to be a Christian and they don't live like a Christian. And what they don't understand is they think that all Christians are hypocrites, or at least we accept hypocrite Christians into our numbers and say that they're all saved just simply because they say they're saved. No, it doesn't work that way. There are biblical standards to tell if somebody is truly saved. And both of these men, even though they claimed to be Christians, even though they had a profession of Christianity, neither one of them was saved. No way, absolutely not. Number two, another thing that comparison between Elvis and Hitler. Elvis was worshipped by millions of people. So was Adolf Hitler. They both were worshipped by millions of people. What does the Bible have to say about that? Look at Luke chapter 16. Luke chapter 16 and verse 15. Jesus speaking here in the text, it says, "And he said unto them, Ye are they which justify yourselves before men, but God knoweth your hearts. For that which is highly esteemed among men is abomination in the sight of God." Mark it down. Every time you see somebody who's very popular, who's very much loved by the world, they are an abomination in the sight of God. I'll show you another verse to back that up. James chapter 4, verse 4. James chapter 4, verse 4. These are definitely key scriptures that you need to know if you're a Christian. James 4:4, "Ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God." Okay, now let me ask you a question. Was Hitler a friend of the world? No. Early on, he was kind of promoted by the world. I know, like Time magazine, I think they named him the Man of the Year the one time, before he really started to attack other countries. But Hitler was not a friend of the world. He's the great villain of the 20th century. What about Elvis? You say, well, you're against him, so he couldn't have been a friend of the world. I'm not of the world. I'm saved. I'm apart from the world. Right? I live in the world. I deal in the world. I have to witness to the world and things, the lost world. But I'm not of the world. Elvis is loved and revered and respected by the lost world. So according to James chapter 4, verse 4, he is the enemy of God. And Hitler, yes, Hitler was loved by, the people of Germany at the time. Yeah, sure. Not all of them. I'm sure that there were some that knew what he was doing. But, yeah, he was loved by his own people. Only lasted for a few years. And now today, if you go to the average German, person living in Germany, they aren't going to love Hitler. But what about if you go to the average American? The average American loves Elvis. They might not care for his music, but they have no reason to be against him. See? Who was the worst enemy of God, Elvis or Hitler? Elvis. Definitely. And by the way, before I go on any further, I know some people are probably saying, this is ridiculous, why are you even doing a study like this? I'm just going to give you a little taste of what's coming up towards the end of this study. All right? And I know, probably some of you are just going to skip ahead, so you can get past all the nasty things like, Scripture and things like that. But what's coming up at the end? I'm going to show you proof that Elvis was working with Roman Catholicism to bring in the modern CCM movement. I'm going to show you proof of that. But I don't want to get ahead of myself here. You're going to believe some of the things I've found, showing that Elvis was part of this very wicked system. And the messed up culture that we have right now in America goes back to Elvis. He was Satan's main tool back there in the 1950s and into the 60s and even 70s when he died. He was that tool of Satan that Satan needed to destroy the culture. And Elvis brought about a whole host of evils into the American mainstream culture that many of us don't even realize. But let's get back to the study. Number 3, Elvis was loved and revered after death. What about Hitler? Was Hitler loved and revered after his death? No. Maybe by a few very, very small minority of people. But the fact is, Hitler is hated and reviled after death. I mean, how many statues do you think that there are of Hitler? I don't know of any. Okay? He's hated. Elvis has his whole homestead there, Graceland or whatever. He's got the whole thing. And people come there dressed like Elvis, and they do candlelight vigils and all kinds of stuff. People are sick. How about Elvis? He damned millions to hell. And he's still damning people to hell by the movements that he brought in. Hitler murdered millions. And he definitely did. Hitler was a bad guy. I'm not some kind of a Holocaust denier, you know, that was all faked by the Jewish conspiracy or something. That stuff is nonsense, okay? And you look at who's really putting that thing out, it's Catholics. The Catholics are putting that junk out, that, you know, denying the Holocaust stuff. I mean, give me a break. You know, yes, Hitler did kill Jewish people, over 6 million of them. And I think that I've heard, you know, there's over 7 million other people died in his camps. You know, enemies and stuff of him. You know, and many of them were enemies of the Catholic whore, the Catholic Church, you know. Why? Well, Nazism, they signed a concordant with the Vatican. Pope Pius XII. Again, history. This is history, people. You know, you can look up the statistics and facts on it. There are even Catholics that write about it. It's really something. Matthew chapter 10, verse 28. Let's go there. Matthew 10, verse 28. Okay, it says here, "And fear not them which kill the body, but are not able to kill the soul, but rather fear him which is able to destroy both soul and body in hell." Did Hitler kill people, their body? Yeah. But you know what? A lot of those people in those death camps, Hitler had no power at all over their soul. Hitler killed their body, but he didn't get their soul. What about Elvis? Elvis has killed a lot of people, soul first, and their body later when they die, and they go to hell. I'll tell you right now, after doing this study, after doing this research, you know, I believe that Elvis damned probably billions of people to hell through the movements that he brought in. And I'm going to show you that as we continue in this study. It's just disgusting. Excuse me. Number 5. Elvis, as I've been saying, he destroyed morality. Hitler, on the other hand, if you look into it, he actually uplifted morality and banned jazz music. Yeah. You say, oh, then Hitler was a good guy. No, Hitler was a rotten individual. Hitler was a very, very bad man. He was a villain. He was a bad man. But he uplifted morality. Elvis brings it down. Number 6. Here we go. Elvis worked with Catholics. Hitler also worked with Catholics, as I've been saying. A lot of people say, Elvis worked with Catholics? Huh? Well, you're going to see it later on in the video. I'm going to show you the proof. I'm going to show you that this is all part of the conspiracy. It's just incredible. All right, number 7. Elvis brought in sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And it's alive today as a result. How about Hitler? What did he bring in? Fascism, Nazism? Is Hitler's brand of Nazism, is it alive today? No, not really. I mean, if you want to say, you know, the system of the Antichrist is going to be very similar to, you know, Hitler in some ways. Yeah, there's some similarity there, sure. But it's never going to be revived the way that Hitler did it, with German nationalism and things like that. No, it isn't there. So again, who was really more evil? A man whose impact only lasted a few years, or a man whose impact is still alive today, even after he's been dead for, what, 40 years? 50 years? Interesting. A lot of people blame the hippie movement of the 1960s and 70s for the culture of sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But I'm going to show you actually that it was Elvis Presley that brought that movement in. And I realize, you know, he was just a puppet. He was a tool of Satan. All right, so it's not that he himself was the mastermind of the whole thing. No, he was used by Satan to bring in this movement. I'm going to show you the proof of that. I have here a study from James Madison University. You can see here it's called Elvis the Pelvis, an analysis of Elvis Presley's relation to the sexual revolution 1945 through 1960. And it's interesting, look who wrote it. I thought this was interesting here. Jarrett Schindler and Dr. Stephen A. Reich. I thought that was kind of interesting. You know, you have the Reichstag, of Hitler there, and Schindler was a Jew that, was, basically helping other Jews to escape and things. Thought that was interesting. But I just want to make the point here. This is James Madison University. This is not a Christian publication. All right, this isn't some Bible-thumping, King James only kind of a person that put this thing together. These are secular people, lost people. Let me show you some interesting things here. Page 1 says here, when Alfred Kinsey published Sexual Behavior in the Human Male in 1948, Life magazine called it an assault on the family and a celebration of licentiousness. Presley gained mass fame through his sexually innovative performance style, earning the nickname Elvis the Pelvis for the way he danced on stage. Presley was the master of the sexual smile, treating his guitar as both phallus and girl, while making sounds that resembled the male approaching an orgasm. Sorry about some of this stuff, by the way. There's going to be some graphic things in this. That's just the way it is. Elvis aroused his female adorers and reached a godlike status among male admirers. He channeled his sex appeal in order to reach unparalleled celebrity as the king of rock and roll. Elvis Presley introduced sex into the mainstream culture of mid-20th century America, sparking a moral panic among critics that helped transcend attitudes on sexual behavior and gender, leading to the sexual revolution. Okay? And this sexual revolution that we have today, I would say it's never been as wicked, and unless you go back to the time right before the flood in the days of Noah. Okay, this time that we're in is more wicked than anything else in history outside of that pre-flood world. All right, very, very bad. Just as Bible prophecy said would happen. All right, let's go to the next page here, page 2. The rise of rock and roll coincided with these movements as the innovative musical blend of Negro rhythm and blues and country gained wide attention. Rock and roll primarily affected the teenage audience as it symbolized something new and exciting. Kenny Puncarelli, a 16-year-old, stated, "It's the rhythm, it's easy to listen to," while others endorsed the sentiment, described it as music we can understand. That's exactly what the modern Christians say today. Professing Christians. That's what they say. And you say, well, how do you know that? I used to be one. I had long hair. I listened to rock music. I defended it. Vehemently defended it. I hated the old hymns. I hated the King James Bible, all before I got saved. I was raised as a modern Christian. I was not King James Bible believing some Bible thumper all my life. So I understand the sentiment. And you say, oh, it's music that I can relate to. It's something that it's my style. I like the style. I like the way it sounds. I like the way it makes me feel. Yeah, because you see it's rebellious. And you receive that satanic spirit of rebellion and it comes upon you, and all of a sudden you're going, hey, I like this. This sounds good. See, you don't have to submit to God. The flesh is elevated through this rock music. That's what makes you feel good. That's what's going on there. Back to the page here. It says, this new style of music captivated youths, there you see the youth again, with its sexual undertones much to the dismay of older audiences. They described rock and roll as an incentive to teenage unrest and compared it to Dionysian revels in Greece, where the god of sex, Priapus, and the god of drink, Bacchus, were feted in the same two-beat rhythms. This lively music had teenagers hooked from the start, and all rock and roll needed was a star. That's very significant right there. And remember, this is written by lost people. Okay? Remember that. They are actually writing this from the perspective not of condemnation, but actually of promotion. They're saying this is when this great new system came in. Elvis was the man that brought in all these wonderful things. That's what they're saying in this study. All right? But notice it says there, the 2-beat rhythm. That's very important. We know of it today as what you would call the backbeat. You know, and I'm not a master of music or anything else, but you can listen to the study The Devil in Music, and you can hear a lot of that beat. Whenever there's an elevated beat, and you have some of that beat going on in the background and things there, and it's faster than the heart rhythm, or even at the same rhythm there, very, very dangerous. Why? It starts to break down your ability to think independently and things. Your can't think of the word right now, but the point is it breaks down that ability to think logically, and you start to respond emotionally. And that's what Elvis Presley's music was. And see, they brought in the satanic form of music, which is what rock and roll is, and they brought it in, and they needed a star to promote it. That's why they picked Elvis. Go to page 5. It says here, Jacob S. Protofsky, president of Amalgamated Clothing Workers of America, stated Elvis Presley has more influence on young people than our educators. Was that a true statement? Oh yeah, absolutely. Rock music has more of a profound influence on teenagers than education of any kind, including the Bible. This Bible is not nearly as powerful as music. You say, prove it. Okay. Put on some very soothing, soft, classical music or Christian hymns, the old Christian hymns, instrumental music, and read your King James Bible. It will help the mind to flow. You'll be able to understand. It'll be a neat experience. Now put on music with a very heavy beat. Rock, rap, heavy metal, whatever. Put it on and try to read the Bible. See how it goes. Is music powerful? Music is far more powerful than most people realize. We are so surrounded by it now. You get on YouTube, you get on any kind of a media type of a thing, there's music playing all the time. I mean, why do you need music to sell a car? And yet you watch a commercial, which I'm not recommending television. Stay as far away from television as you can. That stuff's bad. But you look at a car commercial, there's music. You look at they have commercials, you know, with prescription drugs of every kind. There's music. I mean, another experiment that you can do is just look at a television sometime and shut off, just mute it. It's boring. It's incredibly boring. Put in a movie, no music. Just mute it. Just sit there, you know, put subtitles up so you're just sitting there reading, you know, what they're saying in the movie and have no music. It'll bore you to tears. And the music can invoke all sorts of emotions. It's all part of brain washing, of mind control. And where does this whole modern movement go back to? Elvis. We're going to see about that. Let's go back here to this article. It says, according to critics like writer Eugene Gilbert, through an alliance of the spirit with Presley, the teenager is able to act out of his infantile desire of striving for power through the destruction of adult standards and symbols. The fear of Presley's impact on America's youth propelled his fame even further, as criticism only elevated his status among teenagers who resented being told what to do. The spirit of rebellion. That's exactly it. Let's go to Luke chapter 17. In the Bible, King James Bible. Luke 17 verses 1 and 2. Okay, it says here, then said he unto the disciples, it is impossible but that offenses will come, but woe unto him through whom they come. Kind of like Elvis. It were better for him that a millstone were hanged about his neck and he cast into the sea than that he should offend one of these little ones. You know, I bet you Elvis right now is really regretting what he did. I bet you he wishes more than anything else that he could have a second chance, that he could come back so he's not, so he could live a different life and not go home and burn in hell where he is right now. You say, well, how do you know he's in hell? Oh, come on. The guy's in hell. He's burning. Just incredible. And I'm sure I'm going to offend people with this study. I'm sure that there are people out there that think that Elvis was a wonderful Christian man. It's ridiculous. Back to the article. It says here, adults such as New York Times writer Jack Gould deplored Elvis and remarked on how he disturbed adult viewers due to his striptease behavior, yet they feared the way in which he instantly became a martyr in the eyes of his teenage following. You see, he had a spirit of rebellion, and he infected those out there that also had that spirit of rebellion. Let me show you another verse of Scripture here. 1 Samuel, chapter 15. First Samuel 15 and verse 23. For rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry. Because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord, which Elvis certainly did. Look at this. He hath also rejected thee from being king. Now, in context here, it's talking about Saul, King Saul, the first king of the nation of Israel. But isn't it interesting that Elvis called himself the king of rock and roll? But the reality of it is, he wasn't a king. He rejected God's word, and so God rejected him. And why? What was the basis of Elvis's rejection of the word of God? Why? Because he had a spirit of rebellion. And he brought in rebellion, and he encouraged the teens to rebel against their parents and against the standards that came from the Bible. So you have that generation there in the 1950s that they're being raised with an understanding of the King James Bible, and yet, the spirit of rebellion is entering into them. And so instead of defending the way that they were raised, now the spirit of rebellion has come upon them, and they're starting to like that sound of the rock and roll and everything. And the rock and roll was very nice. It was the teeny bopper rock and roll. See? It didn't have the dark satanic undertones like today's rock and roll. It was very nice and sweet and everything else. That's how Satan baits people in, you see. But you have these people that are raised on King James Bible standards, and later they forget them. You know why? Because the spirit of rebellion came upon them with Elvis and with the popular media of the day. That's what's going on. So that today, you don't even have, all children have today is the spirit of rebellion. They don't even have the standards of the King James Bible being raised on it. Most children today have never even heard of the King James Bible. It's foreign. It's completely foreign to them. I once thought that I was raised with the King James Bible. I wasn't. Upon finding, you can watch my other video on that, my very first Bible version, it was a New American Standard Version. I wasn't raised on the King James Bible. It was foreign to me. So when the rock music came along, which, when I was a boy, it was really starting to get popular, this whole Christian rock thing, late 70s, early 1980s, it really was starting to become big then. And when I was a boy, that spirit of rebellion just came upon me like that. And by the time I was a teenager, I hated the old hymns. And if somebody would try to bring the King James Bible, I used to make fun of King James Bible type words. I'd laugh about the word fornicator. I thought that was funny. Why? The spirit of rebellion had built and built and built and built and built. It's kind of like an infection, and this infection got in there, and they didn't take care of it back in the 1950s. People allowed this sin of Elvisism and rock and roll, they allowed it to fester and to boil and to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Pretty bad. But we'll continue here with the article. Page number 7 says here, Elvis had successfully brought sex into the columns of newspapers and magazines throughout the country, mimicking the effectiveness in which he displayed sexual ideas to teenagers. So Elvis brought perversion out into the open and made it popular. Yeah, that's exactly what he did. Look at 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9 through 11. Back to the New Testament here. First Corinthians chapter 6, verse 9. Know ye not that the unrighteous shall not inherit the kingdom of God? Be not deceived, neither fornicators, nor idolaters, nor adulterers, nor effeminate, nor abusers of themselves with mankind, nor thieves, nor covetous, nor drunkards, nor revilers, nor extortioners shall inherit the kingdom of God. And such were some of you, but ye are washed, but ye are sanctified, but ye are justified in the name of the Lord Jesus and by the Spirit of our God. So you see there, these people that are into this wickedness, the sins of the flesh, they're not going to inherit the kingdom of God. But interestingly, it does not say that they can't get saved. You can get saved, but you have to quit that lifestyle. See, salvation produces a changed life. Don't let anybody deceive you into thinking that it doesn't. Pages 9 through 10. Let's go back to the report here. It says here, Washington Post and Times Herald writer Lawrence remarked on how Elvis and his associates convert outrage into cash. Gotta love that. When the freak followers line up at the box office in reference to Presley profiting off a teenage following inspired by the criticism he received from angered critics. So what Elvis Presley was doing actually is he was using his rebellious sin to make money, is what he was doing. And that's what it was all about. You see, all sin is based on the love of money. Let me show you what the Bible has to say about that. 1 Timothy chapter 6, verse 10. 1 Timothy 6:10, For the love of money is the root of all evil, which while some coveted after, they have erred from the faith and pierced themselves through with many sorrows. But that certainly wasn't true of Elvis. I mean, he didn't have many sorrows when he died. I mean, it wasn't like he was living on drugs or anything and died of a drug overdose or anything, because he was a very happy man when he died. Sure he was. If you don't know, if you aren't familiar with why Elvis died, he was on, I don't even remember, I heard the statistic the one time, is like, I forget, they said he was like a walking pharmacy. I mean, the guy was just on so many drugs, it was crazy. I think it was like over 100 drugs or something that he was on. I mean, it was just nuts. I mean, he'd take drugs to go to sleep. He'd take drugs to get up in the morning. He'd take drugs to stay alert. He'd take drugs to get sleepy. I mean, it just drugs all the time. Right? And it wasn't just all prescription stuff either. He was taking illegal drugs. 42 years old. All right? We're not talking an old man that's got all kinds of pain and whatever else, which I'm not justifying. I'm just saying he wasn't an old man. 4 years older than me. And yet he's lauded as some kind of a hero. He was a loser, is what he was. Page 11 of the report here. And again, remember that this report, as we're reading this is written by lost people. This is not written by independent, fundamental, Bible-believing Christians. Lost people. Page 11. Sexual advertising had grown into a means of reaching out to the masses, a must in commercial advertising. Elvis profited from magnifying his sexual image as he employed the sexual cell directly, whereas popular music as a whole was still discreet. By incorporating his sexual appeal into advertising, Elvis elucidated a new way to reach out to the American consumer. Of course, we don't see any sex at all in advertising today, do we? No pretty women advertising, trailers to pull, loads of dirt or anything like that. I mean, or pretty women selling whatever. It's all over the media. It's all over the place. Good-looking men, good-looking women, with barely any clothes on, selling things that have no relation to people being immodestly dressed. Who started it? Elvis. Satan needed somebody, a star, he needed somebody that he could put out there and use to promote this new system, this new wickedness. Just incredible. Back to the article. Elvis flaunted himself with mascara and glitzy outfits, which prompted record producer Chet Atkins to state, "I couldn't get over that eyeshadow," and proclaimed watching Elvis was like seeing a couple of guys kissing in Key West. Both the male and female viewpoints of Elvis are easily visible in his image, and both are factors in Elvis's role in the sexual revolution. So he started actually causing a lot of the gender confusion too. Back when Elvis was first getting started, back then, women wore dresses or skirts. With Elvis, they wanted to start looking like Elvis. They started putting pants on. Instead of having long hair that was very feminine, they started to make it look more masculine. And the men started to wanted to look more feminine. We're going to continue talking about that as we continue here. But this Chet Atkins guy, here's a picture of him. He was an old singer and things like that. He made a good observation that Elvis was putting on mascara. He was putting on makeup when he would go out to sing. And he would oftentimes act very effeminate. We just read there in 1 Corinthians chapter 6, verses 9 through 11, about effeminate, that God condemns effeminate. Now, what is that? Well, can a woman be condemned for being effeminate? No. A woman is supposed to be effeminate. A woman is supposed to be feminine. So who's it pointed at? Men acting like sodomites. And sodomite is the true biblical term for it too. I mean, you can get really carnal and start calling them all kinds of names, which I'm not going to do here, but the fact is, a sissy man, a man that acts very much like a woman, is what the Bible calls a sodomite. As men, you're supposed to act like men. There's supposed to be distinction there. And what you're doing when you say, I'm not going to look like a man if I'm a man, or I'm not going to look like a woman if I'm a woman, you're rebelling against how God created you. You are rebelling against your Creator. You say, well, society, I don't care. Society's not the standard. The Bible is the standard. And if you're a woman, you should do everything in your power to look like a woman. And not to try and look like Elvis. Which you'll see again why I'm saying that here as we continue. But I want to show you a little clip here before we go any farther. It talked about Elvis starting to look like a woman and whatever else. Here's a very interesting video clip of this guy who's a just ridiculous sodomite. Liberace, okay, is his name. And I mean, you're going to see in this clip, this guy is the epitome of sissiness and of being effeminate. He's an abomination in the sight of God, I'll guarantee it. And he, for years and years, denied that he was ever a sodomite. He tried to have girlfriends and things like this. Tried to deny he was a sodomite. Because see, back then you'd get beat up for it, back when things were still good. And back in those years, he wanted just vehemently deny that he was a sodomite, when in fact he was. And later on, after he died, he actually had lawsuits and things where he was suing people because they claimed that he was a sodomite. But after he died, one of his girlfriends, quote unquote girlfriends, said, "Oh yeah, he was gay." Is the modern news media word there. It's sodomite. That's the correct word. But I'm going to show you this clip here, and notice who shows up in the clip. Watch this.
And Elvis Presley and people like that started copying me. They began wearing it.
You've got a beautiful audience. Bless you. But now I must fly. Mary Poppins, eat your heart out.
But it was hard to say who was enjoying himself the most. Liberace, his host Lord Montague, or the singer Michael Jackson, who had also popped in for lunch and a spin in a Rolls Royce.
You really want more? I'll be seeing you.
All right, well, hopefully you're back from the bathroom after vomiting after watching that, if you're a red-blooded man. Disgusting. But isn't it interesting that this Liberace said that Elvis was stealing his ideas and his outfits and things like that? We're going to see about that in the next quote here. But very interesting. And did you see who showed up there? Michael Jackson. Another sodomite and child molester. It's bad. Okay, back to the article here. Page number 12. The image of Elvis as a cross-dressing feministic performer revolutionized gender as his near-androgynous style transcended gender lines. In the 1950s, Elvis helped destabilize conventional understandings of masculinity with the way he dressed and constructed his appearance. Elvis often wore outfits with pink, the female color of the 1950s, in them, and put on black mascara and eyeshadow. Elvis's appearance separated him from the typical male norms of the time, as his face was almost pretty, and his hairstyle resembled the female pompadour when most males wore their hair short. Okay? Now this is very interesting. I have here a picture. I'm going to put up a picture of this disgusting sodomite Liberace, and see his little outfit there, and he's got, it's all frilly and exciting, and the collar goes way up and everything. And look at this. Look at this picture of Elvis here. I'll put this up. Interesting hand gesture there. It's surfs up or whatever, but it's still, it's another variation of the whole, the two horns up and the three fingers down, symbolizing the Trinity. It's very similar to the devil's salute. But notice how they both have a very feministic outfit on. I mean, very, very sissy. But what about this pompadour hairstyle? You say, well, it was made popular by Elvis. Is it still popular today? Well, I'll show you two more of these little drug-infested devils. First you have Miley Cyrus here. You can see her hair. And next you have Justin Bieber, both using the pompadour hairstyle. And I thought this was interesting here, this rebellious thing. Look at Miley Cyrus's picture there. It says, they want us to back down? Never. And she's just a disgusting little harlot. Years ago that she came out and she was the cute little innocent role model for girls, and I thought, you give her a couple of years, she's going to be the dirtiest tramp out there and just doing whatever she has to do to stay on top of the game, to be out there in the limelight and everything else. Here we are. A lot of professing Christians were, allowing their daughters to listen to that little tramp there, and, oh, she's wonderful, she's such a role model. Yeah, you're regretting it now, aren't you? At least if you have any sense. But continuing here. Elvis appealed to both sexes through his gender-destabilizing image, which helped bring about less defined gender roles in America. Again, folks, let me just pause here for a minute. These are lost people that are writing this. It's not a Bible-believing Christian. It's not some Bible-thumping fundamentalist. Lost people saying Elvis brought about confusion in gender roles. His rabid teenage following took after his lead, emulating Elvis's androgynous style. In Grand Rapids, Michigan, over 1,000 girls cut their hair to look like Elvis's in less than 6 weeks, as teenage girls sought to resemble Elvis's masculinity. On the other side of the gender spectrum, males grew their hair long, and parents feared their sons would take after Elvis's perceived feministic and homosexual qualities. Lost people writing this. I didn't write this. Isn't that something? Did it come to pass? Yep. Sodomy was almost unheard of back there in the 1950s when Elvis was out there messing up people's minds. Today, it's a crime to speak against the sodomites. They're called hate crime. Oh, brother. Just disgusting. Now look at this other quote here. Society viewed him as a boy, a eunuch, or a woman, as anything but a man, and parents feared their children's love for an androgynous figure could lead to homosexuality. And of course it did. That's exactly where it is today. And, you know, the nature of sin is, like I said earlier, it's like a festering wound. It starts out bad, but you can take care of it. But you don't take care of it, the wound festers and it gets more and more and more and more infected. And so what starts out as a little cut on the hand, all of a sudden that whole finger is corrupted. Now it starts to spread. It goes down into the thumb and it gets over here into here and here and here. And pretty soon you got to have that whole hand amputated. If you don't do that, it goes up the arm. And before long, it's got the whole body. Destroys everything. Starts out small and gets worse and worse and worse with time. The movement that Elvis brought in started out small, very innocent. Teeny boppers. And it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And it's what led to the society that we have today. Everything that's going on today that's wicked and evil would not have been possible if it hadn't been for Elvis. But going back to what the original premise of this study is, what did Adolf Hitler bring in as a lasting evil? You say, well, there are still people that hate the Jews. Oh yeah, absolutely. Replacement theology, a lot of the Hebrew movements, the Hebrew roots movement, not Hebrew movement. The Hebrew roots movement is Jew hate. That's all it is. You got all these people that are not Jews, they're not of Shem, descendants of Shem, they are not, you know, Shemitic people, and they're coming out and saying, we're the Jews, we're the Jews. You know, it's Jew hate is all it is. Trying to replace the true people of God. That's what's going on. Go to the next page here, page 14. Okay, it says here, he helped revolutionize ideas of gender, foreshadowing the escape from gender roles that occurred in the 1960s and 70s. You know, there's a bluegrass song I heard the one time, Lester Flatt sang it, and it was, I can't tell the boys from the girls. Yeah, why? Because they got long hair. You know? And where did it come from? Elvis. Continuing, Elvis taught males to embrace the feminine side of themselves while at the same time encouraging females to pursue desired male traits. His overall message seemed to preach equality no matter one's sexual orientation or even, more surprisingly, one's race. Racial integration, another major issue. You say, what's going on there? Aren't all races equal? Well, in terms of salvation, yeah, God's no respecter of persons. God will save a black man, he'll save a Oriental, he'll save a white man, he'll save a white woman, he'll save whatever. In terms of salvation, yeah, there is no, you know, special thing that you have to be a special race to get saved. No, that's not there. But in terms of segregation, the Bible does teach that. Acts chapter 17, God set the bounds of their habitation. Okay, watch the sermon on the thing of kindreds. And what about kindreds in the Bible? Does the Bible teach racism? I think is what the sermon is called. You know, there is something there. God has a specific plan for a specific kindred of people, the nation of Israel, in the future. And it is a geographic prophecy. So you can't say, I'm a Jew and I live in Texas, or I'm a Jew and I live in New York, or something like this, and Harlem's going to be the restored kingdom. Or that stuff's nonsense. It is a racial prophecy for a geographic place, a geographic location. The nation of Israel over there, actually in Jerusalem. That's what's going on there. But you see, by coming and breaking down those distinctions, by coming and saying, let's all be one, if you study it out, that's actually the movement of the Antichrist. So again, and again, I'm not saying you segregate and you hate one another. No, that isn't it. You just simply say, we're going to preserve our culture, our diversity, if you will. We're going to be over here, you be over there. You don't go and blend all the cultures together and say, let's make no differences, let's all come together as one big happy world. No. Keep the nations separate. And you can, again, watch the study. I'm not some kind of racial supremacist, for crying out loud. I get that thing a lot. You know, people, oh, you're a racial supremacist. No, I teach what the Bible teaches. That God has a specific plan there for the different kindreds. And says, hey, respect the culture. Respect how I made you. Again, male and female, there's a difference. The different kindreds, there's a difference. We're not supposed to all blend together. There should not be gender confusion. There should not be kindred confusion. That's all I'm teaching. I'm not putting anybody down with this study, okay? Unless you're Elvis, you know, then he's already down in the fires of hell. But we'll continue here. Page 15. Elvis adopted the style of African-American musicians like Rufus Thomas and Arthur Crudup as he mixed and blended black and white music and black and white modes of performance into the emergent hybrid of rock and roll. And again, you can hear the study that I did on the devil's music. Rock and roll was a euphemism for fornication in the back of a vehicle. The vehicle is rocking and rolling as the fornication act is happening. That's where it came from. So how can you have Christian rock and roll? It's like saying, I believe in Christian fornication. Huh? Rock and roll is a euphemism for fornication. So how can you have Christian rock and roll? Doesn't make any sense. But continuing here, the next quote. Much to their parents' ire, white teenagers reveled in a sexually explicit rock and roll culture rooted with black musical styles and tradition. Black and white teenagers alike flocked to Elvis's concerts, with girls from both races sharing an obsession for Presley. Lost people wrote that. I didn't write this. A university study about Elvis. And again, people, you know, oh, you're racist. I don't appreciate your racist, you know, undertones and overtones and, you know, whatever tones. You know, like I care. You know, a lot of people got mad at me because I said that rock and roll comes from the Hamitic people. You know, the Africans, the black Africans. But it does. It comes from voodoo. The drum beats, the rhythm and stuff like that. Lost people are saying the same thing here, okay? This is scientifically verifiable proof. Go to the Rock and Roll Music Hall of Fame. Check out this. Where did rock and roll come from? They'll tell you the black Africans. We're dealing with facts. Page 17. Critics described him as utterly nauseating. I agree. And after viewing a Presley concert, an Oakland, California policeman went as far as to state, if he did that in the street, we'd arrest him. Presley's sexual connotations alarmed a generation of elder Americans who feared the potential effect of Elvis on teenage youth. A moral panic overcame these terrified critics as they perceived Elvis as holding values they did not want transmitted to teenagers. Why didn't they stop him? Police officers said, man, if he did that stuff out on the street, we'd arrest him. Indecent exposure or whatever else, being lewd in public. Why didn't you stop him? Why was it allowed to continue? Why didn't people, Americans, stand up as a whole and say, stop it? We have to kill this infection. And I don't mean execute Elvis. Okay? I'm not talking about that. I'm saying you have to stop the infection before it gets worse. Nobody did. You know why? Oh, I'd say probably because a lot of professing Christians back then were listening to Elvis. It's innocent after all. I mean, he does have a gospel album. And if he has a gospel album, well, bless God, he must be a Christian. And we can listen to Elvis and we can enjoy his music because, you know, well, some of his lyrics might be a little bit, you know, bad. But I mean, I really do like his music. That's why that generation, the 1950s generation, had King James principles, but they had rock music rebellion. And that's why they're worldly. I guarantee you, take Elvis back to the early 1900s, they'd have run him out of town. They'd have locked him up. They would have done what the police officer said they should do. They would have locked him up. Indecent exposure. Get that guy out of here. But you see, the morality was breaking down and breaking down and breaking down and breaking down. And television was in each home. The more televisions, the more the morality fell apart. Yeah. But let's continue. Page 18. One of the main issues that critics feared in Presley revolved around his impact on teenage youth, as these members of the younger generation worshipped Elvis. In the generations that followed Elvis, sex would be a key way to reach out to the American consumer. And here we are today. All right? It's right there. That's it for the report on this, you know. And again, James Madison University. Lost people saying that all the evil and things that we have, well, all the good things according to them, all the stuff that we have today was a direct result of Elvis. Right there. You know, a lot of people, and myself included, I used to say about it as the hippie movement. Oh, the hippies, those dirty, rotten hippies and things. The hippies came from Elvis. And Elvis came from the Africans. The morals. The problems. Facts. You say, well, I'm a black Christian, Brian. I don't appreciate. If you're a black Christian, then you would agree with me. Why? The Bible's your standard. I'm not cutting on black people. I'm saying scientifically proven facts are saying where this stuff is coming from. Hey, I'm German, you know, a descendant of German ancestors. Is there some problems there? You know, should I defend Hitler simply because he was a German or something like that? And should I get offended when people attack Hitler because Hitler was a German and I'm a German, so I get offended? Of course not. Of course not. I can look at that and I can say that was a part of Germany that was wrong. That was a part of German culture and heritage that was wrong. Some of the things that they did. All right? And actually, you know, it wasn't so much the German culture. It was Catholicism. Again, replacement theology coming in and trying to get rid of the Jews. That's what was really going on there. You know? But I'm not going to defend Hitler simply because he was a German and I'm a German. All right? Why would you defend rock music simply because it comes from Africa and you're black? That doesn't make any sense. If it's evil, it's evil. If it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's sin, it's sin. The Bible's the standard.